good shooting.
Darkman is a comic book movie from director Sam Raimi, who is behind directing the best Spider-Man movies starring Tobey Maguire. But you may also recognize him from the Evil Dead franchise. But I think his magnum opus is Oz the Great and Powerful.
Am I in heaven?
The point is, Sam Raimi is the man behind some of the most iconic franchises in recent memory. Evil Dead is still a hugely influential horror franchise that even got a modern TV show.
Yeah. Looking good. Looking sweet.
And Spider-Man may be almost completely to blame for this explosion of superhero movies. But before Tobey Maguire made his way to the silver screen as nerdy Peter Parker, Sam Raimi had a little prequel, you could say, to Spider-Man in the form of Darkman. Darkman is Sam Raimi's now mostly forgotten masterpiece. Now, I use the word masterpiece very lightly in this instance because it's clearly not one of the greatest films of all time. For one, the effects are still just terrible. Even for the time period, the effects were not good. All of these close-ups during this helicopter scene are awful. This blue screen is wobbling like crazy, and the lines don't even match up. You can clearly see the blue screen here, and while this is a cool transition, the matte line is clearly visible. It's incredibly dated, especially when you consider that Jaws and RoboCop came out 3 and 5 years before this, respectively, and even more so when you consider that Jurassic Park was only 3 years away from this movie. So yeah, the effects are bad. Plus, the continuity in this movie is a nightmare. The bandages on Darkman's face never match up. Sometimes they look like they're brand new, and sometimes they look like they're disgusting and old. There's no real consistency. But the thing with Sam Raimi movies is that that stuff doesn't really matter. Most of his movies, this and Army of Darkness especially, are so campy, goofy, and self-aware that that kind of stuff is clearly Sam Raimi just saying, I don't care, just do the scene. It's all about how the movie feels, how it operates, more so than those fine little details. And Darkman is a perfect example of a movie that is not very well made, but still works incredibly well because of the way it's executed.
Maybe I should be wearing a funny little hat. Do you like it? Yeah? Yeah? See you dancing freak. Pay 5 bucks.
There's such an infectious charm to everything Sam Raimi has worked on, and Darkman is no different. The fact that you can see all these blatant mistakes just seems like it's more funny. It just makes the movie more entertaining because I imagine Sam Raimi behind the camera just laughing his head off. But this movie, Darkman, is honestly one of his more dark in tone. It's not like a Spider-Man where it's kind of lighthearted with some elements of darker things going on. The movie at points is genuinely unnerving and actually pretty effective.
I told you everything!
I know, Rick. I know you did.
But let's pretend you didn't.
Even though it is a darker movie than I'm accustomed to seeing from Sam Raimi, it is still very funny. It still has that typical Sam Raimi wit and charm to it that makes it genuinely hilarious at points. And I'm not kidding when I say that when I first saw this movie, it genuinely leapfrogged over a lot of superhero movies, even though this isn't really a comic book movie, because it isn't really based on a comic book. Sam Raimi just wanted to make a superhero movie, but he couldn't get the rights to one, so he just made his own, which is kind of amazing. But without further ado, let's just actually get into Darkman. The movie opens with one of the best gunfights ever. The main villain of this movie, this guy, Robert Durant, is trying to make a deal with this guy when it all goes south, which leads to a guy pulling off another guy's wooden leg and shooting people with it. There's these cars that were just sitting in crates for some reason, and then this guy gets his fingers cut off. It's a pretty awesome opening scene. We see how the main villain operates, what he does to his competition, and it sets the stage for the campy but grounded atmosphere. It's a tad generic as far as opening action scenes go, but awesome nonetheless. That's kind of an interesting detail of this movie. A lot of it can actually be written off as pretty standard stuff, pretty generic stuff. You've got an Italian mobster villain that is the driving force behind the revenge our main character seeks later. You've got generic businessman puppeteering the mobster from behind the scenes, and you've got a main character who is driven by revenge for the people that wronged him. It's all pretty standard stuff. But what elevates this movie, much like most of Sam Raimi's other movies, is the way he executes it. Just look at this very next scene.
System ready to receive input.
There's so much style and charm to it, and all that's happening is the scientists doing mundane lab work. The music, combined with the frantic camera work, creates this energy to the scene that makes you feel the importance of what they're creating, which just so happens to be liquid skin? I don't really know why they're developing it, but whatever. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in this opening scene. One, the dialogue is not good.
You know, we're close. We're smart guys. So what is it? Why can't we make these cells stable? We're smart guys.
However, that's part of the charm of this movie. It's so campy and ridiculous. It just fits perfectly with the tone of what else is going on. Now, number two thing to unpack in this scene is what's actually happening. Now, Liam Neeson and this other guy are developing liquid skin, which apparently can't survive past 99 minutes, and they don't know why. They're trying to figure out why this liquid skin they're developing always melts at the 99-minute mark. And they never figure out why throughout the rest of the movie, except in this scene where apparently the cells live longer in the dark, which sounds like something Liam Neeson would use to his advantage later, but he doesn't? So why even establish it in the first place?
The dark. Oh, of course. The dark. I think the synthetic cells are photosensitive.
This is unbelievable.
Oh, what is it about the dark? What secret does it hold?
Anyway, Peyton and Frances McDormand, Julie, get a little intimate. Peyton puts his coffee on this important piece of paper, then Julie goes to work. She works for a greedy, corrupt businessman who is developing a new city and also lets a man get murdered by Ed 209. Oh wait, no, that's RoboCop. Darkman is just RoboCop, although no one gets brutally murdered in an office space, so that's unfortunate. So then we cut back to Peyton, who is still working on his skin, when suddenly the bad guy ruins his night. I really love this sequence though. You've got some really great stuff going on. You've got some genuinely unnerving, scary stuff, and you've got this awesome ticking clock explosion that Liam Neeson is crawling his way to try and stop before he explodes. But of course he doesn't, and he explodes. It's awesome. Of course, his girlfriend, Julie, sees this and thinks he's dead. But actually, he's just getting rotated on this turntable after suffering a near-fatal explosion. So this nurse then gratuitously explains that Peyton is homeless, can't feel pain, can go berserk for little reason, and somehow has super strength. He immediately escapes and attempts to reconnect with Julie, but he looks like Toxic Waste Man, so that fails. But before we move on from this alleyway though, let me briefly mention Danny Elfman's score, which is absolutely amazing in this movie. It may be one of his all-time bests. When those organs come in, it gets me rock hard. So much like Doc Ock trying to harness the power of the sun in a dumpy warehouse, Darkman recreates his liquid skin lab in a dumpy warehouse, which is one of those classic don't think about it moments. How did this place have power? Where did all that equipment come from? Why is this cat here? And how is he able to do all of this on his own? It doesn't matter, and I'm fine with it. Who cares where he got it all? It doesn't matter. We just gotta get to Liam Neeson putting on other people's face and perfectly mimicking them, even though that doesn't make sense, because it's awesome.
That would be just fine. That would be
just fine.
So then we see Julie at some party with her secret villain boss, where Darkman also just so happens to be, so that he can see Ted Raimi, so that he can murder him, in a scene that is quite possibly the greatest scene in this movie. This is the true inciting incident in this movie. From here on out, Darkman basically just picks off all the thugs that wronged him one by one. Also, from here on out, this movie moves at 100 miles per hour. For example, this scene later on where Darkman is running from Robert Durant, and then it just cuts straight to a carnival that has nothing to do with anything. I really thought that when it cut to this, it would be so that Darkman could hide in plain sight from Durant. I thought that he would run in here and he'd be able to give him the slip and you'd have this little game of cat and mouse, but no. It just cuts to this carnival and now he's enjoying rides with Julie like nothing happened, even though it literally happened 5 seconds ago. The pace is so breakneck that you never get a chance to breathe, and it can make the movie feel, at points, a little disjointed, like you're missing scenes. But on the opposite side of the same coin, I was never bored in this movie, and I felt like it absolutely flies by. I never checked my phone, I never got bored, I was completely engaged until it was over, and it felt like the movie just flew by.
Here you are, doll.
You too,
Here's your favorite. I'm pretty good today.
So now that Ted Raimi is thoroughly dead, Darkman sets his eyes on his next target, this bald man who he snaps a bunch of pictures of so that he can generate liquid skin and impersonate him. This is where the movie actually gets kind of fun and clever. It isn't just Darkman going to each thug individually and murdering them, no. I mean, he did that to Ted Raimi because why not, but he starts blackmailing them in kind of interesting, clever, and entertaining ways. Like with this bald guy, he impersonates him to steal the mob's money and then use it to make it seem like he's a traitor to them.
That explains his disappearance.
Hey, I don't know nothing about that.
Where is the money, Paulie?
What money? I swear to God, Mr. Durant, I didn't make the pickup. I've been right here sleeping. Jesus, I swear to God. But I don't even know how I got dressed.
Well, Paulie. Have a nice flight.
And of course, this all happens within 90 minutes because Darkman's liquid skin only lasts that long. This is an ingenious little plot detail. His liquid skin that he's using to impersonate people only lasts 99 minutes, which creates this ticking clock that Darkman has to constantly pay attention to so that he doesn't get caught. And just this tiny little detail creates a lot of tension in scenes that otherwise would have absolutely none. So kudos to whoever thought of that. That was a great idea.
God, what have I become?
And if it isn't clear that this movie is inspired by classic Universal monster movies, then this shot makes it crystal. Darkman is perched in between these two gargoyles, conflicted by what he's doing, which begins the character's slow spiral down from being a kind-hearted scientist into a cold-blooded monster. This is visualized by the continuous close-ups of Peyton's eye as he looks through a microscope. The first thing you see of him is his blue, innocent-looking eye, but as the film goes along, each time we see this same shot, he looks more and more like the monster he is becoming, until we get this awesome Phantom of the Opera type shot of him looking back at his girlfriend, where we see that there is little left of himself and he is sort of embracing his inner monster. This is a really haunting, harrowing character arc that I really didn't see coming, because especially since the studio had a lot of interference in this movie, from what I understand. Bad test screenings, studio interference, editors having mental breakdowns. I mean, the troubles behind the scenes were extensive. So having such a dark, interesting character arc for this character was really great to see, because most of the time when studios give notes that it's too dark, you know, make it happier, people don't want to see a dark movie. So I expected this to be like his liquid skin he develops to work completely and he runs off into the sunset with his girlfriend Julie, but nope, he just becomes the monster that everyone sees on the surface. It's really awesome.
Peyton is gone.
Anyway, now Peyton loses his mind and prances around like a person in a psych ward. Then he finally goes to confront Julie and reveals that he isn't dead. She obviously freaks out, but he convinces her he's real and then immediately goes to record Durant so that he can impersonate him. Because he listened to a recording of him, Darkman can now perfectly mimic his voice, which he uses to blackmail him by going to rob a convenience store dressed as him. Pretty clever. Now, I know I said that the Ted Raimi scene is the best thing in this movie, but I lied. This scene where he flips out after not winning a pink elephant is the best thing in this movie. Now, if you aren't on board with the super campy, goofy, dark tone of the movie, this scene is gonna come across laughably bad, because you've got these dated effects, and Liam Neeson is acting completely over the top and insane, so it's goofy. But this is one of those scenes where I just picture the people behind the camera, Sam Raimi and his crew, just laughing hysterically at how absurd it is, because it's spurred by something so stupid. Darkman is just trying to win a pink elephant for his girlfriend at a carnival, which is like this completely mundane event, and yet he loses his mind, and what results is this carnival worker getting his hand broken. Like, it's insanity. It's in these moments where Sam Raimi really shines through, and it's in these scenes where movies like this that he's made become incredibly memorable to me, because I can see a scene exactly like this in a modern movie, like a Marvel movie, and it being played completely differently. I can see it being played completely straight, where somebody starts freaking out and then the girlfriend calms them down before they do anything, and then they just go away and nothing happens. I can see that happening in a modern movie, but in this, nope. Sam Raimi plays it completely different. He goes way over the top with it, and Darkman snaps this man's hand in half and then throws him through the back of this thing, and then the scene's just over. It's amazing. So Peyton's skin starts melting after he breaks this guy's hand and runs back to his dumpy warehouse as Julie follows him, trying to figure out what's going on. He hides, she leaves, and then she heads to work, where we reveal the real villain of the movie. Julie then runs away, but is immediately followed by the bad guys who show up to kill Darkman.
Oh, shit!
Holographic recognition active.
This whole ending sequence is great. I absolutely love it, and I don't want to spoil too much because I really want people to kind of get this movie and absorb it for themselves. But the gist of it is, bad guys die, good guys win. It's really simple. It's really fun, though. There's a lot of really genuinely clever things going on that made me go, ah! And there's some really entertaining action set pieces in it that would rival modern blockbusters. It's a really great ending sequence. Plus, you've even got this Joker-esque scene where the bad guy is taunting Darkman.
Do it, Westlake! But think of this. You let me die, and you become as bad as me, worse.
Darkman has him by the leg, holding him over this like 150-foot drop, and this evil businessman is like, yeah, you don't got the nerve. If you do it, you'll be just as bad as me. And then Darkman just murders him. It's awesome and really satisfying.
I'm learning to live with a lot of things.
But that's it, that's Darkman, the forgotten classic 90s comic book movie Darkman by Sam Raimi, which is such a fun, unique experience. It's really nothing like anything I've ever seen before, especially not in a superhero movie. It's really dark, it's really entertaining, it's super goofy, has an amazing score from Danny Elfman, and some genuinely unnerving sequences. It has everything, really. It's got comedy, it's got horror, it's got action, it's got it all. It's awesome. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's amazing, really.